Porn is healthy. It helps you relieve stress. They've done studies that says it reduces the stress level. You have one of the most powerful forces in human nature, the male reproductive drive, corrupted from its earliest stages.
Every click feels good. Every video promises release. But behind the pleasure lies corrosion, shame, secrecy, and the collapse of real connection.
Your sexual energy is powerful. With great power comes great responsibility, and that's the part that's missing.
Pornography is marketed as entertainment, but the hidden cost is your integrity, your intimacy, your life. This is the fight men cannot afford to ignore.
To beat this, you have to heal your trauma. You have to learn how to control yourself. You have to learn how to communicate your needs to your partners. You have to take good care of yourself. You have to be an awesome person. The cure is the aggressive pursuit of a great life.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Hello, welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with Craig Perra. He's the founder of the Mindful Habit and the developer of the Mindful Habit system. It's a way that a lot of athletes, C-suite executives, CEOs, really high-performing men not only get over the things that they're working on in their life, but optimize their life to be the best that they can be. And Craig has a podcast that talks about sex addiction and porn addiction. So I'm really interested in this episode. I'm curious to see where it goes. And we haven't had nearly enough people talking about porn addiction. I'm curious what you think about this, Craig. Like, it's so common. I see so many guys now, even just compared to 5-10 years ago, coming to therapy or coming to work with a porn or sex addiction. Are you seeing the same thing on your end?
Well, not only am I seeing the same thing, that conference that we went to told me that everybody I was in connection with struggled with it. They may not have identified as an addict, Mark, but they struggled with it. And that's what I hope we can do here today too, is when we talk about sex and porn addiction, we're talking about mental health, physical health, sexual health, integrity.
Yeah, it's a lot there. And, I had my own journey with it. I don't know if I was a full addict, but it's hard to know, right? Because I think, my generation, the millennial generation, we grew up with the internet. We were one of the first generations to be exposed to having porn that accessible. And I will say, for most of my young adult, I was like a daily user for sure. And it came to a place where it was affecting my sex, it was affecting my relationship with women, and I had to cut that out. But so many of my generation, like, that was just normal for us. Like, it was never questioned that you wouldn't look at porn, right? It was normal that men would be looking at porn all the time.
Well, and you see this in the men's health narrative that's out there. Porn is healthy. It helps you relieve stress. They've done studies that says it reduces the stress level, cortisol, combined with masturbation in this sex positive narrative group, which is important to be sex positive, but we're talking about one of the most powerful forces in human nature. And when that is being wasted at worst, like high fructose corn syrup, or at best high fructose corn syrup, at worst staining your soul, corrupting your arousal imprint, and lying dead eye, in the eye to the woman you've sworn to love and protect. And that's what I did. That's and it's so normalized. Even in my darkest deviance, I was able to rationalize. Well, there's a massage parlor on every corner. If every guy knew you could pick up an escort on the street, they'd do it. Like, just insane. But the porn was the gateway, Mark, for me. The porn was the what got worse and worse.
Yeah. Well, so let's just dive right into your story. Like, tell us about that escalation and some of the messaging you were told about sex and porn growing up. Because you're a Gen Xer, so you guys are kind of in between, like, the super Puritan boomers and then the millennials, where we were starting to experiment with gender and sexuality. So I'm curious what your experience was around education.
Yeah, my parents were the boomers. So my sexual education was the Catholic sexual education. And that
Straight to hell.
is, yeah. Sex is dirty and
Yeah.
disgusting, and you save it for someone you love when you're married. Like, that's it. And it was that. So I was given up for adoption. I was born to a 14-year-old teenage girl who just didn't have the capacity to take care of me. And so being adopted comes with its own host of issues. And I was adopted into a home to college-educated parents, to wonderful people who tried their best. My dad is in the New England Coaches Hall of Fame, and here am I, coaching people. And that shame around sexuality in my mother's style of discipline, Mark, and I'll leave it at that because I don't talk about this is the only thing I don't talk about publicly, just because my parents are alive and I want to honor their legacy. But it was really, really, really difficult. Really difficult, like scars on my body difficult. And there was an older neighborhood boy who had free reign, and there was porn. And the 16 millimeter, we had to get the camera out, and we'd look through the lens. Then came VHS, but that was my safe place. And he touched me. I felt shame about it. That part of me, and that continued on for many, many years. That made me feel even more shame, and it gets stuffed down, stuffed down, stuffed down. And the contrast, though, is I'm thriving. Class president for 2 years, captain of 2 sports, um, almost made it into West Point, and went to college, went to law school, got a great job, married my high school sweetheart. And that darkness never went away. And there'd be periods in my life where I was having a difficult time at work, or going through a number of one of my many mental health episodes. And I want to say here proudly for everyone to hear this, I am mentally ill. And I wear that with honor. I said that at my Rotary Club. What do you want everybody to know about you? I was so proud of myself. And they like, yay, Craig, made me feel so good, because we got to reduce the stigma. We got to start talking about it. And I want people to start thinking about mental health, just like physical health, just like mental health, physical health. Anyway, and it got darker, Mark. The escort scene got darker. I started using drugs with the escort. I actually got fired from a 6-figure leadership executive job back east. I'm a terrible husband, decent father, but I'm the comeback kid. I got a bigger job. They moved me out to California. I'm now running a billion-dollar company's compliance department, biggest job of my life, and I hated it. And I don't know how to communicate my feelings. At the time, I didn't. So I have a part that I call the saboteur. And the saboteur said, you feel stuck out here in California because now I can't practice law. I don't have a license in California. So now what am I going to do? I was afraid to quit. Didn't know what I would do. Felt trapped, hated the job, hated my boss, and I've worked with wonderful bosses throughout my career, and I was batshit crazy. And so my saboteur part said, I got a good idea. Let's start using the synthetic stimulant bath salts, and paying for sex, and going to see trans escorts and cisgendered escorts, and going to adult bookstores. How about you stop even bothering going to work and not tell anybody? Like, I had never done that, and boom. I went into work intoxicated. They asked me to leave, and I got fired. And that's when I tried to hurt myself. I was like, fuck this, I'm out. Like, everyone around me is miserable. The common denominator is me. And that led to the most amazing life I could possibly imagine living, man. But that was 15 years ago.
Yeah, that was the rock bottom, it sounds like. Yeah, I know we'll talk about you mentioned this a little bit in, before the show about IFS, and I like the way you're framing that, so I just wanna put a little tease out there that the saboteur sounds like he was helping you in a way, but very, very violently, like that's not the best way to leave a job, but I think we do have these parts, these shadow parts that try their best to get us out of that situation, you know?
Yes, and this is a good time to use the part that stuck my face in that pile of bath salts, hoping my heart would explode. That part was trying to help. That part was trying to alleviate pain. So if that part is trying to meet a need, that's the example I use, Mark, because people are like, wait a minute, it's not meeting a need, and my angry part isn't meeting a need, my liar part isn't meeting a need. No way, my shame part. Are you crazy? And I use a couple of these examples because it does make you pause and think, like, wait a minute, these parts are trying to help.
Well, so what got you out of it? I always ask that question. We have a lot of people come and talk about their stories of recovery. And there's that time, like you said, you probably almost died. It sounds like it was, suicide attempt or overdose. It's like, how do you start to right the ship? Because I know there's guys listening out now that, maybe are at that level or maybe at their own rock bottom and they're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to like move forward and turn this ship around.
Surrender, admit you're powerless, and those two words from 12 steps simply mean reach out for help. So what I did, Mark, at that low point, and I was blessed to have resources, insurance, and parents if I needed help. So I have to acknowledge that blessing. But what I did that completely changed my life was I did something different. I found a therapist. His name was George Collins in Walnut Creek, California. And he had a book that like I was gonna work through and do exercises. And like I had never had that before in my therapy. Like so that was like that got me excited. And that's what brought me where I'm at. And he also didn't subscribe to the sex addiction or porn addiction as a treatment model for compulsive sexual behavior. And it was at that low point where I learned that, wait a minute, I've been in sex addiction treatment for almost 20 years. How could I not know it was rejected as a treatment model by the American Psychiatric Association? So I fought on that hill for a while. I was angry. Like, dare, how dare nobody tell me because it would have opened my eyes to other avenues earlier. And it is a wonderful place for a lot of people. But I needed to do something different. I needed to like learn stuff. I needed skills. I needed tools. And so I found this therapist who ultimately hired me. Talk about a the question. Anyway, the issues on behalf of the therapist. But I'm very grateful for him. He changed my life. He saw something special in me, and so let me say. So one, I learned that the model's highly controversial, highly controversial. And then I read Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit, and the simple phrase, break a habit, make a habit, was wicked inspiring at the time. It was revelatory to me. And that came in concert with this Feed the Right Wolf story. The two wolves inside you, good, bad, which one wins? The one you feed. And that came to me. And I saw so much of my life pursuing sobriety. And I remember realizing, again, this is my journey. Don't recommend it for anybody. But I remember thinking, like, sobriety sucks. This is terrible. I do not want this to be my life. I did, and so this notion on focusing on something else lit a spark in me, and led to me finding this wonderful therapist, led to this wonderful therapist hiring me, and my obsession with curriculum and developmental milestones. These were things I did professionally, Mark, and I just had this crazy idea that I could build a better mousetrap for some people, for the people who need my thing. And yeah, 13 years later, here we are.
I love that story, and I want to dig into it. And I want to say, I mean, I was smiling before because I'm also in recovery from drug addiction, and like I had the same thing. I'm like, sobriety sucks. It sucks. Like it's just boring. It's like not doing something, right? It's not goal focused. It's just like don't do the bad thing or the thing that's destructive for your life. And it took me, I mean, I have a different version of it, but just what you're saying of like, it's like the baseline. Like it's like the blank canvas, but I think you have to add something on top of that. Whether it's, building your business or trying to make healthy habits, or for many guys, I know it's like getting in shape or trying to date again or whatever, right? But it's like you need something on top of it. I truly believe that sobriety in and of itself is like not successful for many guys because it just creates that void. And you're in that place of like quiet desperation and loneliness because you emptied out the bucket, but you haven't filled it back up with anything.
Well, and it can actually be dangerous, right? You know this. Like there are clients that come to me, Mark, from a faith-based porn addiction program, and an absolute mess, barely making it into work, completely dysregulated, because all he's doing is focusing on stopping the porn. It warms my heart to give this guy permission to say, hey, I know she's upset, but we set attainable goals here. Okay. Now, if you don't want to set attainable goals, then you're going to have to go someplace else. But whatever you're doing's not working. Give him permission to focus on the other things. Waking up at a decent time, reading a little bit, a self-help at night, walking back and forth to the mailbox 2 extra times to put a few extra steps. Those things, and he needed psychiatric help, by the way, and I made sure he got that. But my point is, it's such a powerful coping strategy. It's one that that we have been using in secret, in shadow, since we were children. So you have one of the most powerful forces in human nature, the male reproductive drive, corrupted from its earliest stages. Shame, sex, don't talk about it. If they talk about it, it's fire and brimstone and sin. And like, it really, really screws up the kid. It really, really, and it screwed up me.
So let me ask you, right? I guess I'm making an assumption. I'm assuming that you're having sex, right? I know with people that have like porn and sex addiction, you still have to have sex at some point, or you still want to have sex. It's not like so pure abstinence doesn't work for many people, right? The same as like if you have an eating disorder, right? Like you have to eat. So I'm curious for you, like what is healthy sexuality? Because we talk a lot about the dysfunction, but I think it's hard to really like nail down like what does a healthy male sexuality look like?
I love that you said that because I have, um, I've been doing a poor job, but part of my mission is changing the conversation from sex addiction and porn addiction, which only speaks to a very narrow segment of the male population, to sexual health, integrity, strength, power, whatever however you as a man listening want to define that broader conversation. That's the one I want to have because when first of all, just interesting fact. 13 years, Mark, thousands of clients, 30 countries, not one of them primarily had a sexual issue. The men who primarily have a sexual issue, they need to see a therapist. They got to unpack that identity shit. It's always the symptom. It's always the symptom. And I think if we can, like asking guys, like, do you feel healthy in what you're doing? Are you doing it in secret? If someone in your life knew what you were doing, knew what you were watching, right? You can't just say, oh, watching porn, knew what you were watching, like your wife's friend's thirst traps. Is it healthy? And chances are, it's not.
So how do you move towards a healthy expression? Like what is that? Because I agree with you saying. I think so many men have so much shame around it, right? And there's no real role models for healthy male expression. I mean, even the like, I don't know, sexual icons. If you look at, I don't know, James Bond or something, right? Who's like sleeping with all these women and he's like a player, like that's not healthy either. So it's like, what is a healthy sexual expression for a man?
I'll start with one word, and that is it honest? And there's a whole bunch of different ways, Mark, that we can look at this. And what I've learned over the years, that sexual health, the definition of sexual health varies widely between people in terms of what activities they find enjoyable and pleasurable. Where I come in, or when someone hires me, they got caught. That sexual expression wasn't honest. It was in secret. And it wasn't making them feel better about themselves. Nothing wrong with using masturbation to relieve stress. Do you feel good about yourself? Like simple questions like that, I think, open up the door to deeper conversations to really understand how we men. Oh, and here's another flaw of the sex addiction model. It suppresses male sexuality and it becomes the bad guy.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show. I'm curious. I think the conversation around sex addiction is often, it's the guy that keeps having sex, right? That like it's like the typical escalation model where, and that's a little bit of your story, right? It starts at porn and escalates to like, maybe hookup culture, and escalates to massage parlors or escorts, and it becomes something that just, the snowball just keeps going. So I'm curious about that archetype, and then I have another archetype that I want to ask you about in a moment. But for that guy, like, how do you stop the the typhoon? If someone anchors their whole life around having as many sexual partners as possible, or you know having as many orgasms as possible, whatever the metric is, like, how do you start to unwind that knot?
Yeah, the first thing I do to help clients unwind that knot is ask them to tell me where they want to go in life and why they want to do it in 7 areas: career, finances, health, hobbies, relationships, spirituality, and sexuality. I want to know what they see on the other side of this compulsion. And that goes back to, my remark earlier, this thing in my head. I was like, sobriety sucks. I want them to see, or get them thinking about their why, because having that why is good for mental health and longevity and just all around, understanding yourself and living an authentic life. So I want them dialed into what they want to accomplish and why in those key life areas. That's the first thing that I do.
Yeah, and then once they have that why, how do you get them to start to reduce those, self-harm behaviors?
And so we start really early with self-care. So eating, sleeping, dieting, exercising, and practice mindfulness. I love this. This is like my favorite exercise, Mark, and it is so easy and it's so stupid, and you hear it like, and listen, I felt the same way when someone was giving me this advice. But one ridiculously attainable goal in each one of those areas. One ridiculously attainable goal. They come to me, they got all these goals, they want to shoot super, super, super high. I say, great, that's plan A, but my plan B, because I want to help you create sustainable change, lower the bar. Because what happens when you lower the bar, and my goal today, because I haven't exercised in years, is to walk up and down the stairs 2 extra times. When I walk up the stairs, when you set a ridiculously attainable goal like that, and it doesn't happen, you've got a narrower focus on the block. It illuminates the block in a way. If, let's crush it, man, let's do all these things, that eventually crashes, that momentum fades, the systems haven't changed, the goals aren't attainable. So anchoring them into self-care and Kaizen goal setting is also really important.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I read that you probably read this book too, The Four Disciplines of Execution. They talk about that too, of like, having it's like getting the flywheel going and getting used to winning, which I think is so important, right? Because I think also as men, like you're saying, we want to have those crazy goals. We want to be like, I'm going to go to the gym every day, twice a day, or I'm going to bench, 325. And then you're going to fail because you've never been to a gym in, 5 years. So you're going to fail. And then when people fail, they get emotional, understandably, and they shut down. So it's like if you can get used to winning, then you keep that snowball going. And when you win, you want to win more. So like you might go up and down the stairs a couple of times, maybe like, you know what? I could do another one. Right. And then boom, now you're doing it 3 times. You're like, I could probably do one more. And then you just doubled your output for that day. So I think people like you get motivation that way. It comes from action and systems, not from, an emotional internal place. I think that's a huge myth that's out there.
Huge, Mark. I'm so glad you said that. It's exactly what you said. You want to create a culture of success. And it doesn't mean all the other horrible things aren't horrible and they all need to be addressed, but you cannot do it without self-care. So I'm tired of pretending that you can. I'm not going to do it anymore. And so early on, I love, 5 areas, and it introduces mindfulness too, because that's a new one for people. And the reality is 97, 8, 9% can't sit for more than a minute. And so that's the first goal. Sit for a minute. Count your breaths. See what happens. And all sorts of crazy things happen. The demons come. They can't do it. They realize how messed up their attention span is.
Yeah, I mean, you see it all. My graduate degree was at Naropa University, which is like a Buddhist university in Boulder. So like meditation was a huge part. I did a Buddhist psychology program, and like that was it. I want to say to listeners out there, I mean, just what Craig is saying, I really underline this point with every guy I talk to is like when you meditate, especially when you start, it's not going to be Zen, blissed out, monk on top of a mountain. It's going to be just what he's saying. It's going to be your demons. It's going to be your shame. It's going to be your, ADD mind. It's going to be replaying the last conversation. Like it's really fucking uncomfortable, but it's starting to pop the hood on your brain and being like, what's going on in there? Because if all that's happening when you're just doing nothing, right? Like imagine what's going on when you're actually trying to get things accomplished, right?
Yeah. And you're in fight or flight, like boom. And that's it. Thank you, Mark, for saying that. It really is important, guys, to, again, lower the bar. Just get curious. What's happening up there? And observe. And be the observer for as long as you can. But early on, I say just a minute, because again, when you narrow the goal and you make it ridiculous, one, it works because it just does, because it's attainable. I love it how it illuminates the blocks. It really just brings those right to the surface, and that's important.
Yeah, you get to see all those resistances and all the ways that you cut yourself off at the legs. Um, I want to ask you kind of a second sexual archetype. I'm seeing this come in more and more, and I think it's related to porn. But again, I'd love your thoughts on this because it is still kind of an enigma to me. It's the guy that, how do I say this? He'll often say that sex is like just medicinal or like medical. Like there's no pleasure. He actually doesn't really enjoy sex. He masturbates rarely, often uses porn, but it's really just like to get that tension out. But it's a guy who's completely disconnected from his sexual self. There isn't desire there. There isn't pleasure there. There isn't, those feelings of being powerful or conquest or, things that you hear with other guys. It's just like a very kind of shut down system. So I'm curious, question A, like, do you see that? And question B, like, what do you think is going on there for that guy? Because I'm seeing that archetype show up more and more in my office.
Is he part of the baiter community? Do you know?
Like, what's the like masturbation?
Have you heard that term?
No.
So what it sounds like you're describing is this term called a solosexual. It's a new term. And the other one is a pornosexual. Someone who likes that better than anything else. What and certainly there are sexual issues there. The deeper issue, my hypothesis would be, is his disconnection from himself and the impact of like screen time. Like you're starting to see or are seeing the results, because a lot of my guys are 50 and up. So occasionally we get a young guy. Well, no, 20, 25, 30, but most of the guys are a little older and married in my program. And there's a different wiring, Mark. Their brains are different. It's really like I want to be able to describe it better. There's something that happens with that intense visual that started at a very young age, and I think that man has a really hard time connecting with other people and has no desire to do it, right?
Yeah, I definitely see that. Yeah, and it is a younger guy. It's the guy that like grew up online in many ways. So his primary attachment figure was the internet or the computer or the tablet or whatever, the device was.
Parents divorce?
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The at the conference, there were a couple things that struck me was the impact of boys being raised without fathers. And you put all of that together, and then you have this porn, which is also becoming a gateway to misogyny. And Mark, like the Bop House has a G-rated account.
Really?
Yes, yes, they have another. So the Bop House is a and I feel I even hope I don't put anyone onto this. It's a house of adult content creators, and they have an account to promote it that is to just women talking. And so you're seeing this line that used to exist between like media and porn completely get obliterated before our eyes, and we're seeing the impact. And I'll be honest, it's a little frightening.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I know this could be a taboo topic, so I mean, obviously say as much as you want, but with like the sex positivity movement, and I think with putting sex and sexuality so front and center, especially for the younger generation, like what do you think about that? Is that a gateway to porn? Is there a healthy version of that? Is there a way to do that? Like, because I can see the positives of bringing it out of the shadows. But I think there are negatives where it's like you're exposing kids to sexual content at like a really young age. I mean, we're talking like, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yeah, and that obviously is ridiculously inappropriate. I think that, okay, the sex positive community, how is the container for some of the kindest, sweetest, most loving, and smart people I have ever, ever, ever met. Even they, and I will say this on the air, Dr. David Lay, the author of the book, The Myth of Sex Addiction, thanked me for turning him around about the impact of pornography. In fact, he wrote an article, and the article highlighted the different communities of people, BDSM, gay, trans, cisgendered men, and there was one group that consistently where porn had the worst impact on them, and it was married men. So we can acknowledge that it's a safe place for some people. We can acknowledge that. We can hold space for all of that. But I think the pendulum has swung too far without the responsibility, without the appropriate warnings, without the, hey, this can really, really, really fuck you up. And, I see no, no, none of those warnings,
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, human sexuality, like you said, is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. And it's like giving, a bunch of monkeys like machine guns or something, right? It's like you got to train them how to use that or else they're going to shoot each other to death. And I do see a lot of that. And I worry about the younger generation where it is great to be sex and body positive. But I think there has to be that line of like not having shame, but also honoring it, I guess, like respecting it for the force and the power that it is. And that it is like playing with fire. Like you're not ashamed that you have fire within you, but you got to be careful when you're expressing that fire.
Your sexual energy is powerful. Uh, Quoting Voltaire and Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, and that's the part that's missing.
Yeah, they're like it is fun and pleasurable, but it's not all fun and games, right? Because it can have some real detrimental effects for people.
Yeah, and well documented. Right, this isn't there. There is no question. Like the we can argue about whether it's an addiction, whether it's not, what to call it, how to treat it. Those conversations are going to continue, and the good news is different people respond to different things. But there is significant data that shows watching porn in secret has a horrible effect on how you feel about yourself, your ability to experience reality in your relationship, and your arousal template, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, can you share some of that? I think especially around the arousal template, because I know some of the data around, sexual dysfunction, right? Men having either premature ejaculation or like erectile dysfunction. But I'm curious, like what are some of the studies and things that you're referencing?
The one thing that I believe is that the AI girl. Hold on, let me gather my thoughts here. The the rise in ED medications have spiked dramatically. There are studies that suggest that up to 40% of that population are have can still get aroused with pornography, and that's the question, Mark. And listen, there's no quote that comes to mind right now from a study. Certainly can get you anything that you need, to support the conversation that we're having afterwards. But when you look at that spike, and there are a lot of guys taking it, and it's being sold as a performance enhancing drug, and they take it because they can't get hard or stay hard with their partner. I ask those people, can you get hard and stay hard and ejaculate with porn? And if they can, then they don't need the pill. They need to schedule an appointment with you.
Right. It's not a biological issue, right? It's like a psychological or stimulation issue. And there's a lot of that. There's a great book I'll put in the show notes for the listeners, called "This Is Your Brain on Porn," that goes into a lot of the neuroscience. That's some of the stuff that I'm pulling from, but it shows that, like, yeah, if you're watching porn, especially the way that modern men watch it, which is like multiple tabs open, moving between multiple videos, you're training your brain to be like, oh, I can have sex with anybody. Look at all these women. I got 10 women on the bench right now. And it's the women that are porn stars, so they're attractive, or they're attractive to you if you're into kinks, right? But, like, then you're with your partner, and she's just, a normal girl, right? Normal woman, and there's nothing wrong with that, but your brain has been tuned, one, to think you have multiple partners, that you're, like, top of the food chain in some ways, and that the bodies that you're looking at are, like, far above and beyond, like, a normal body. So I think erectile dysfunction is really common with married men, right? Because they got tuned to a different but fake partner. So they're not attracted to their current partner anymore, which is wild, and of course bleeds out into the relationship in other ways, not just sexual.
Well, and the partners feel so like the guy's oldest and most impactful habit, this thing he's been doing since childhood, for so many partners, is their deepest wound. They to them it means he doesn't love me. I'm not attractive. I'm not good enough. I'll never look like those women. He'd rather have them than me. It does so much damage, and that's why when we have these conversations, I like to focus on the integrity component and the shame component and the coping strategy part of it, so we can step up a level and not argue about whether or not you're addicted, but have a healthy conversation and, like, is this working for you?
Yeah. Well, and I'm hearing like it's a call to step up in your relationship across the board. Because those solosexual men, I like that word. I'll be using that with my guys. Like, when I talk to them, they like porn because it doesn't have the complexities of relationship. And in some ways it is misogynist, right? Where it's like you have a woman that is there sexually for you, and then you could turn her off. right? You can turn it off and you can close the window, and like you don't have to deal with the complexities of being in a relationship. You don't have to deal with drama or fights or emotions or disappointment, right? Like it's very transactional. And I think, as boys, we want that because we're immature, but as men, it's about learning how to be in a relationship with a complex human, not just like a sex doll.
One of my favorite expressions, and I love what you said, is porn is safe. And it's a difficult word for guys it's a tough pill to swallow early on, but when they really start to think about how they feel when they're in that place. So, like this client that you referred to, porn is safe. No conflict. Doesn't have to do anything to meet their needs. And Mark, what you're seeing is what technology is doing. The business people, expect the AI girlfriend market to be $9.8 billion in 2028, and it is 26% year-over-year growth. It is exploding.
I mean, that's the future. That's the future. I mean, I'm seeing that with some of my younger guys are experimenting with that. In my industry and in your industry too, in coaching, there's a lot of people turning to AI for therapy and coaching, right? It's becoming like that self-help. It's a relationship, right? But it is that relationship that, just like porn, you can turn on and you can turn off. You can ask it all the questions. It doesn't have any needs. Like it is very ideal in some ways, but in a very like immature way. And I'm also very concerned about that, of like what happens when you actually have that kind of perfect girlfriend, you know? And you don't have to learn relationship skills and you don't have to deal with the imperfection that comes with being in a relationship with another human.
It's survival of the species stuff, man. And Japan's birth rate is lower, and they attribute it to a number of different reasons. One of the articles I read, all the way at the bottom, it said porn. But I'm going to speculate that it certainly is a factor. Is a factor. And the dating scene for men now is horrible. And I don't know, Mark, because those aren't my guys, but some younger guys have come to me and shared with me the things like that Scott Calloway talks about for these young men. Brutal.
Brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Yeah, and the dating apps, it's like that used to be fringe, but now that's the only way that you meet people, which is wild, right? I mean, we're seeing like the dissolution of community, even just like community that was shitty in its own ways, but like just going to a bar and picking up a woman, like that doesn't happen anymore. Like it's everyone's like on their phone or with their own friends, or there isn't that mingling that I think your generation, really, Gen X, was like the last generation that really had that. My generation, it's really started to move online into like dates and, very everything being siloed. Everything's so siloed now, you know?
Well, and think about it. There was a time when people who met online were embarrassed about it. There was something in the culture, the perception was you had to do that because you weren't able to find someone locally. There was a lot of shame and judgment around that. And it went from that to the norm.
Right. Now it's the only way. I mean, I have guys that are trying to do the, old school way, and they're called creeps, right? And losers and weirdos, right? And like these women at the bar don't want to talk to them, right? They don't want to be approached. They have a lot of barriers up. And these are good-looking guys. These are not like weirdos, right? But we have so much anxiety in our generation, and so much of this, like, we're so afraid to break the ice or to take a risk, take an emotional risk. Which, like, that's what you need to be in a relationship, the ability to take those risks. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online.
And everyone listening, like a comment on Mark's podcast, leave him a review. We need to get this message not just our message, all of the things that you talk about. I feel like we're in a fragile time, but we're also in a time where we have more information than ever before. We can connect like we've never been able to do before, and we can lift each other up while we. And here's the other thing: there's no healthy sexuality and an unhealthy relationship with technology. I've never seen someone have a terrible relationship with technology and be successful in prioritizing their sexual health.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. And listeners, yeah, we've had guests on that talk about screen addiction and gaming addiction directly, and this is kind of what we're talking about, right? Is like this is a very emerging field, and I go a little more dramatic, which sounds like maybe Craig you agree, or it's like these things are almost like weapons. They're like weapons of mass destruction in a way. And I think they are like just sweeping through our generation like a plague, like an infection, and they're hurting a lot of men. They're hurting a lot of us.
Do I think that world leaders and the people at the top, porn is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It is. It's. I don't want to say anything that's going to get anybody sued, but there are people out there who've peeled back the layers of the funding in this multi-massive billion-dollar industry, and it was all the traditional lenders that you would expect to be taking advantage of it. I'm not, Melissa Tankart did that research, and like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I have to think that they are well aware of the impact that the proliferation of this medium is having on the male, and getting them addicted to these products, making him feel bad about himself, more isolating and shame. I just think something as powerful as human sexuality had to come up at one of these conspiracy meetings, man, because uh, it's so corrosive. It's destroying families. I never would have thought that magazine I found in the gutter when I was a child would lead me to having this conversation with you, Mark.
Right, it was about the freaking WMD, but like it is. I mean, I think porn, we've had guests that have also talked about like, sugar, right, soda, but like these are like the next cigarettes, you know, where it's like I think they are being sold and they know that they have addictive properties and they're made to be more engaging and more addictive, right? I mean, a lot of these tech platforms are built on engagement and they're built on trying to keep people locked in the system. And what better way to do that than with a super attractive woman with her shirt off? I mean, it's just primal. It's just hooking the monkey up to the matrix.
Let me tell you something, Mark. And you know this. I'm reinforcing what you already said. They know. They have the data. I almost entered into an agreement with a big adult company to offer my services on their platform. Right? Can't beat them, join them. Now we didn't end up going through with it. We had some ethical concerns. There were issues that led us not to do it, but we were in the non-disclosure agreement part of the negotiation, and this isn't a secret, right? They know, they have the data. They know exactly. They're super users. How many super users are consuming this product in a way that it can only be causing harm? They know, and they don't care.
Yeah, well, they don't even care. They want more super users, right?
They want more super users.
It's more money, right? It's more subscribers. It's more people viewing the ads. Like that's what they want. They're building the platforms to get those whales. Well, so I mean, I'm curious. Like, I know we're getting all hyped up, and I'm with you, man. Like, what is your message to get men motivated to make this change? Using this podcast as a platform, like, there's so much. We've talked about all the forces in this direction, trying to get guys addicted, connected, whatever you want to call it, overused, super users. But like, what's the pitch for the other side?
Yeah, the pitch is your life is going to be great because your sexual energy is powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility. See, Mark, to beat this, right, you have to heal your trauma. You have to learn how to control yourself. You have to emotionally regulate. You have to learn how to communicate your needs to your partners. You have to take good care of yourself. You have to be an awesome person. The cure is the aggressive pursuit of a great life. Life is hard either way. it's hard both ways. You know that. Oh shit, it doesn't, it doesn't mean that we still have problems. We just manage them better. And in fact, they hurt more now because you don't have the coping strategy. Thank you. But yeah, no, there's an awakening afoot, and more men are getting help than ever before. They're getting therapy with your amazing team and you reaching out to me. The pendulum of is swinging back towards sexual health, power, integrity, strength, and courage, and I'm all for it.
Amen. I think that's it, right? I think that's it. It's like, what I tell my guys is like, you're just gonna be more alive. Because like you said, when you look at guys that do it, it's a brain dead zombie activity. I especially many men that are the super users, I found that they don't really enjoy it after a while. It's just like your brain is getting hacked. So it's like that's not a way to live. It's not a way to live being like a drone or being mind controlled by this shit. Like just be more alive. The goal is to be alive and actually live a life that is worth it.
I love it. I love it. And those super users, Mark, here's an interesting perspective. Lens I invite them to look through. The behavior is self-harming because there's this pleasurable, hedonistic kind of, like lens it's colored with. That super user is self-harming.
I agree. I agree. I mean, I'll go a step further and say, like, I think it is in some ways anti-masculine. Like, I think as men, our job is to, not live without pleasure, but certainly to channel pleasure. And hedonism, if you look at like philosophy and go back to the Stoics, right? Like, I really connect with that, where it's like hedonism is in many ways the enemy. Living a life of pleasure and comfort is not what a man is supposed to do. A man's supposed to live a life of challenge, of purpose, of legacy, of meaning, like doing the hard shit. So for many guys, like this could be the hardest thing you're ever gonna do in your life, but it will make you a better man.
It forces you to. It forces you to. We're wired for variety. We're wired to be more visually stimulated. It started in childhood. It feels amazing. Meets all sorts of short-term needs. And can you call yourself a man of integrity, right? Think about how important integrity is, because if you're out of integrity, your body knows it and you feel it deep down inside, no matter how good you are at stuffing it away or rationalizing it. You are not even close to your full potential if you're out of integrity. And when you get that aligned, you start feeling better about yourself. You get a little traction underneath you. A few more smiles come along, and you get the wins and navigate those challenges. Because what we're also doing, Mark, as men, we're breaking free from the cult of beauty. It is destroying our daughters, our mothers, our sisters. It's screwing us up because we see these images. We see in a day what a farmer 300 years ago wouldn't see in 7 lifetimes.
Ever.
Ever. All of them put together.
Yeah.
Every pre-industrial farmer ever in the history of farmers has not seen women, the number of women that you see in a day because of the internet.
Well, so let me ask you this, right? If someone's listening to the show and they're excited, they're inspired, maybe they're thinking about their porn use in a different way. Let's say, they're not a super user because I think those people have some idea of what's going on, but they're a guy that's like, they use it every day, maybe every couple days. And they're like, oh man, maybe I need to make a step here. Like, what do you recommend that they do? One step they could do right after listening to this show to start to move that needle.
Yeah. Subscribe to my podcast, Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. So start, and by doing that and listening, you start prioritizing sexual health, but really start with, why do you want to be healthier in this regard? What because if you stay too stuck on the break a habit, you need the stronger make a habit. So figure out, like, why do I, and here's the thing, right? Because there's a lot of religious important religious conversations and moral conversations. Why else? Because those aren't the only reasons. Well, I don't feel good about myself. I want to feel better about myself. Why do you want to feel better about myself? I want to be there for my wife and children. Why do you want to be there for your wife and children? Because I love them and they're important to me. Why are they important to me? Legacy. You need that spark. You need that why. It's not about not doing it. It's about living your best life and prioritizing your sexual health, treating it as sacred. It's a sacred, powerful, connecting, bonding, relaxing, stress-relieving energy, and it must be respected.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, and listeners, will have the link to his podcast in the show notes. I find that stuff really helpful. When I was going through my early recovery, I listened to a shit ton of podcasts. I listened to a shit ton of self-help books. Like, one, educate yourself for sure. But two, it keeps it top of mind. Because you might listen to this show and you might be like, yeah, I'm ready to make a change. And then you're going to forget about tomorrow and you're going to look at porn. It's normal. It's going to happen. But if you have a voice in your ear that's like, hey, remember that porn thing? Remember that porn thing that you said you were going to work on? That's what you want to have. Almost consistent, just a constant pinging to keep it a priority. I found that really, really helpful. Still find it helpful. Then when I want to work on something, I just kind of keep those voices going so they don't get lost in the noise.
What you're talking about is sustainability. How do you make it last, right? I think that's so important, what you just said. I wanted to, you need those voices, those reminders. And so I look around my office, there are a number of places that I see that inspire me, that remind me of where I came from, things that I'm working on, some of my parts work that I'm doing. I've got my Hulk right here to prove it, and my bell. And so my identity is reflected within my field of vision. And I like what you said. That's so important.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's critical. Having those reminders, using those systems of the brain, building in, that ritual that I know I talked about on your show, building in those mirrors to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I think there's so much noise and so much stuff pulling our attention that we need those North Stars more than ever. Like the farmer, the pre-industrial farmer, he knew what he was doing. He was just planting potatoes, man. Like, it was very, very simple life. But in the modern man, there's so many things pulling at our attention, and it just keeps a lot of us stuck.
Yeah, we're in the attention economy, they say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so Craig, I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like we could have kept going. I'll certainly have you back on in the future. But for the time being, if people want to follow you, if they want to learn more about you and learn more about the mindful habit, where can they find you online?
Thank you, Mark. Privilege. So blessed to get to know you, and so excited to send clients to you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. If you're looking for me, you can search or mindfulhabithelp.com on the web, and all my social media channels are there. If you search for The Mindful Habit on YouTube, TikTok, and you'll find me. Don't spend too much time on those platforms, but you'll find me there reluctantly, because I want to tell people to get off it, but I digress. That's where you can find me.
Great. Yeah, check them all out. Like I said, all that stuff will be in the show notes. Bring him into your life. I think Craig's a really good dude, and I think he can be that mentor and be that voice of sanity and reason in this kind of crazy world that we live in right now. So Craig, thank you again for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And listeners, thank you for tuning in. As you know, the Men's Therapy Podcast is an arm of Men's Therapy Online. So all of our stuff is available at that website, menstherapy.online. We have all the archive of this show. We have a ton of blogs. We have, also therapy services, right? We can do individual, couples, group, retreats. So we're your one-stop shop for men's mental health. So check us out, menstherapy.online. And we'll see you next week, another episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.